today we're going to be looking through the art of the muscle car. I'm not going to sit on the ground. I'm just on the ground. I just thought I might do that for the thumbnail picture. Look at me in my nice SpongeBob hat. So here's the front like side of a 1960s Ford Mustang, made by Dave Newhart, photographed by Peter Harold, and forward by Brock Yates. Take a look at the side here. Nothing special. It's a Motorbooks product. Here we got a front of a 1970. Is it 76? What? She is fed. Yeah. Love you too. Freaking hate it when that happens. They always interrupt me in the middle of the video. Sorry. Here we got in front of a Pontiac Firebird. I don't know. Maybe it's a 76 Firebird. Looks like it. Now, today's muscle cars are recognized as works of art, as valued as collector's items, as many Ferraris, Corvettes, and other blue-chip collectibles. Without their outrageous performance, aggressive stances, and sleek styling, muscle cars can define the sex. A portable studio he developed especially for shooting cars, acclaimed photographer Peter Harold, the one that did the book, captured these magnificent machines in all their glory. The art of the muscle car presents all icons of muscle car history, complete with detailed essays and lavish portraits, featuring stunning large format photograph. This is a definitive collection. I can't pronounce collection for the true enthusiast. I guess that's what that word is. I really don't know. Open it up. Oh, look at what we got here. Just what is a muscle car? Road Test Magazine asked in June 1967. They answer exactly what the name implies. Is it a product of the American car industry, adhering to the hot rodders' philosophy of taking a small car and putting in a big engine in it? The muscle car is Charles Atlas kicking sand in the face of the 98 horsepower weakling, unconcerned with such matters as comfort and handling. The vintage muscle car was built for street line speed and quickly became the ride of choice for power-hungry racers and serious motorheads in a country where performance was measured in brute force a quarter mile at a time. The muscle car was perfect, the perfect machine. Well, it still is today. I'd say that. In the inventing years, these high performance beauties have earned their place in the automotive pantheon as prized by collectors, or no, yeah, as prized by collectors and aficionados, as they are denizens of garage and track strips. Classic muscle cars now fetch big money at auctions and feature any story America's automotive glory days. The icons of muscle car art, including the Camaro or Chevelle SS, the Hemi, and the 446 Cuda, Challenger, Roadrunner, and the Super Bee, the Super Cobra Jet, and the Boss Mustang, the Buick GSX, and the W30 Oldsmobile 442, and the AMX Javelin are all in this book. Here on full display in this lavishly illustrated volume, each described in a detailed essay followed by the gallery portraits that capture the art of the muscle car at its finest. Ooh. What do we got here on the front of the book? Here we got a 396 Cobra Jet symbol, but what car is that? Is that a Chevelle? Or is that a Camaro? I want you guys to answer that. That's that's literally a answer question that I'm giving to you guys. What car is that? A Chevelle? 1967 Chevelle? A 1969 Camaro? Or a 1971 Corvette? You guys answer that in the comments. Oh, we got not one, but freaking 3 rows of chapters. There's 47 chapters in here. I don't know if I would read this all. But I'll get as much as I can. Look at this. Photo by Steve Robinson with a 60s, 70s looking Charger. Challenger. Beautiful, dude. Foreword by Brock Yates. A wet dream on wheels, that is what a muscle car is. The embodiment of every absolute and adult male's hopes and dreams. The tool by which scores were settled. Reputations made and social outcasts embraced. By tapping into the imagination and buying power of the baby boomer generation, the muscle cars of the 1960s and 70s refined our culture. The country was heading with a taste of freedom upon emerging the Great Depression and World War II. Flush, the era of the hot rod, was winding down, and the NHRA, which Wally Parks was at the helm, was turning drag racing from a sport into an entertainment event. The American auto industry was working to fill a void in the marketplace. Throughout the 1950s, automobiles began changing from comfortable modes of transportation to symbols against and changed American automobiles. General Motors, with help from John DeLorean set off a powder keg of inspiration and competition when it introduced the Pontiac Gto to American market industries. The relatively inexpensive beasts were readily available, could be scooped up in countless ways, and created a generation of race them on Sunday, sell them on Monday drivers who lived by the adage I hold near and dear. The only rule is there is no rules. The merge running race seen in LA on Detroit's Woodward Avenue was changing everything. And the big three were scrambling to keep up with the ever increasing sales of muscle cars. At car and driver, we had a front row seat to changes take place with industry, and Detroit threw open its doors to grant us unlimited access to new models coming out of the factories. One of the most brilliant marketing moves I ever saw, the hyped race between the Pontiac Gto and Ferrari. The reality was a showroom floor Pontiac couldn't beat Ferrari, but the buying public wasn't aware of this. Unbeknownst to the Ferrari and car and driver, Royal Pontiac, a race shop masquerading as a dealership, provided an aftermarket high performance Pontiac GTO for the test. And with that right there, history was made. Through a Herculean and underhanded effort, Pontiac beat Ferrari, and thus began the greatest word of mouth marketing campaign ever ran in this country. With an ever increasing market share and bands like the Beach Boys tooting the merges of the 409 muscle cars, we're here to stay. Or so we thought. A mere decade would pass before this purely American phenomenon would face a confluence of outside forces bent on regulating every aspect of the auto industry, undermining the viability and the variety of muscle cars in the process. By the early 70s, Ralph Nader and his merry band of buffoons, they were in full cry, and federal restrictions were being enacted against automakers in reaction to more restrictive safety legislation. The Cannonball C to Shining Sea Memorial Trophy Dash was created, and in honor of this race, I purchased the love of my life, a white 1971 Dodge Challenger. I knew that had to be a 71. I thought it was like a 76, but nope, it's a 71. That I had rebuilt my legendary stock car, Cotton Owens. This car uses a modified 340 cubic inch V8, carries 55 gallons of fuel, and has a roll bar, Recaro seat, special suspension, and a tall 2.76 final gear for high speed. Coast to coast highway travel. This beauty still sits in my garage and the cornerstone of my small but beloved car collection. Well, that's good for you, dude. Good for you. By 1974, the writing was on the wall. The Clean Iron Act, Draconian, I don't know how that word right there is pronounced. Insurance practices, OPCE's oil embargo, and the threat of depleted oil reserves destroyed the market for the muscle cars in America. The Pontiac GTO brought us into the era, and the Pontiac Super Duty ended it. How sad. While the era had ended, the dreams never died. The Pontiac Gto, Chevrolet, Chevelle, and Camaro, Plymouth Cuda, Dodge Charger and Challenger, and Ford Mustangs still get gearheads cranked. The throaty growl of a performance engine still in meters fascinates. Almost 30 years later, modern versions of these masterpieces are being reintroduced to a new generation of drivers, but it's a new world. These reproductions of original muscle cars are hot, but they don't engender the same passion as they once did. They are faster, sleeker, and safer than the ancestors, but they are expensive and you can't tinker with them. Computers have all but destroyed a layman's ability to tool under the hood. And while street racing is making a comeback, these races showcase smaller, lighter cars, not heavy behemoths of your youth. The gauge "you can never go home again" is true. We will never truly revisit the decade of the muscle car. But boy, what a ride we had. Signed Brian Yates, one of the producers of the book. Now we get into the innocent years. Right here we have the side of a 1960s or 70s, I believe 1965 Pontiac GTO. The Innocent Years, Part 1. John Z. DeLorean commissioned his engineers to build the very first muscle car, Pontiac GTO, because General Motors had ordered Pontiac to increase its racing efforts. Efforts that had been taken by Pontiac from a struggling division to the number of three brand in the United States. But behind Chevrolet and Ford, the GTO, which was really, which was really a ghost of Lehman's mid-sized sedan with a big fast engine, turned out to be exactly the right catalyst injected into the U.S. Culture at exactly the right time had to ignite a performance car era like the ones we had never seen before and will never see again. No one quite knew what was happening at the time, or extreme the muscle car phenomenon would eventually reach, but everyone knew that the GTO was spot on perfect for the exploding baby boom market. It was a simple car with a big engine in a 1964 America. It was a simple place, that that would soon change. A country deceased by a highway system that opened up virtually any possibility a person taking to the roads could imagine. And the amazing new muscle cars coming out of Detroit were just the rides to carry those young dreamers to the unlimited horizons. Again, this is the side of a Pontiac GTO from 1965. Oh, now no, that was a 64 GTO, I bet. There's the GTO's turbojet. No, not turbojet. This one's a 6.5 liter V8. While the other one, on the other hand, was a 396 turbojet. Alright. For everything, for everything, there is a first. While many argue that the muscle car started in the 1950s with the Chrysler 300, or even before that with the Olds Rocket 88, the birth of the muscle car, according to the classic formula, a huge engine in a mid-sized platform. Accord with the release of the Pontiac GTO, the GTO had an option package that consisted a handful of emblems and a heavy 389 cubic inch V8 mounted on, and the upscale Le Mans version of the division's then new Tempest, the GTO would revolutionize the performance car market. The GTO was a massive success, not only because of its tire shedding performance, but also because of Pontiac's Super B market efforts, spearheaded by an ex and drag racer Jim Wangers. By targeting his marketing efforts at the young and young at heart, Wangers' promotional work made the GTO a virtual icon overnight. It helped the it helped that the car could trounce virtually and any other car fresh off a dealer's showroom floor. And perhaps his most audacious marketing move, Wangler's Wangers arranged for Car and Driver magazine to pit the Pontiac GTO against the famous Ferrari GTO, at least on paper. You see, the magazine couldn't get its hands on an example of the Ferrari at the same time it had the Pontiac GTOs on hand testing. So a cover painting was used on the line with an actual head-to-head shootout photo. Yet at the end of the day, the Pontiac acquired itself very well against the wanted Italian sports car. Partly, it may have been because Rangers had covertly swapped a hot-rodded Pontiac 421 cubic inch in place of the stock 389-inch unit. In any case, the resulting tidal wave of power blew the car and driver testers away. The Pontiac GTO exceeded all expectations, while some might have felt that the 32,450 units sold wasn't a success. In the truth, Pontiac hadn't expected to move anywhere near that number, but better yet, was the halo effect the hot new Pontiac provided. It seemed that every magazine had considerable coverage of the new model, and it drew significant traffic into Pontiac showrooms. It didn't take long for every manufacturer in Detroit to sit up and take notice. The responses to the GTO resulted in the biggest horsepower race in automotive history, and the GTO was there first. So, yeah, there's everything about that. The base engine, base price, curb weight, production number, and number produced with base engine. There's like everything you need to know right there. And then there's the other Pontiac GTO's engine. And there's the GTO right there itself. The license plate says it's a 64 GTO. Ain't that beautiful? And then there's more pictures showing a little bit of an interior, the classic stereo, rev limiters, and the manual transmission. Here's the engine. Just so you guys can just get a look at it. Oh boy, the Chevelle. Turns out it was a Chevelle that, just in case, so you guys at the beginning of the video, I said guess which that came from. It came from a 65 Chevelle Z16. So there's a little bit of a hint for you. The introduction of Pontiac's GTO in 1964 left the public clamoring for muscle cars from all the other manufacturers. And Chevrolet sure wasn't going to be left out of the fledgling market. The Bowtie division had the mid-sized Chevelle Malibu. This was before the Malibu even became a four-door. This was like the good Malibu, not the four-door one. Built on the same corporate actuator as Pontiac's Gto. By using this stout convertible frame beneath a closed body, front and rear anti-roll bars, and a beefed-up front suspension, Chevy engineers had an ideal respiratory for the Mark pension. Chevy engineers had an ideal respiratory for the Mark pension. Oh wait, no, I already read that. Chevy engineers an ideal respiratory for the Mark pension. Chevy. Oh my gosh, why do I keep reading the same thing? I'm being dumb. For the Mark 4. There we go. Ugh. I'm confused. A 396 cubic inch V8 rated at 375 horsepower. The RPO L78 big block was only available on the Muncie 4-speed manual transmission. The 420 pounds-feet of torque and generated by the L78 transmission. Oh my gosh, I'm getting myself confused now. The 420 pounds of torque generated the L78 would have much Chevrolet's unique two-speed power glide automatic transmission with power flowing through an Uric automatic transmission. Ugh! 11-inch clutch. This power plant featured specifications virtually identical to those found in the 396 cubic inch L78 mill installed in the Corvette, except that in the Corvette, the engine was rated at about 425 horsepower. This likely had more to do with the Corvette politics than with any technical differences between the engines. The exterior was the polar opposite of the mail store beneath the hood. A single Malibu SS 296 badge on the rear. Fenders were only clues that this car was a purpose-built drag machine with a license plate. The interior was a standard Malibu, a comfortable mix of style and space. The only hint of the representative behavior of which this car was capable was a 160 mile per hour speedometer mounted in an instrument panel. While no one was really expecting the Z16 to patch the speedometer, it could cover the quarter mile in the 14-second range, and especially impressive featuring considering the lack of grip produced by the bias ply tires of the day. Chevrolet didn't exactly advertise the Z16. It was a stopgap effort indeed to counter the GTO, and GM's marketing types were still trying to keep the new breed of outlaw muscle cars under the radar. The Z16 wasn't cost effective to build, so Chevy limited the production, building just 201 examples, including the this yellow vehicle with a black top. Only 10 Z16s left the factory with this color combination. The two other colors were just offered, tuxedo black and regal red. The Z16 lasted just 1 year and was replaced by the Chevelle SS 396 for the 1966 model year. Yeah. There's everything you would want to know. Just get a look at that real quick. There's the side of the car. Yep. No. The front of the car is where that came from. Which you haven't seen. There's an engine, the 396 turbojet V8. And there's the back of the car. There's the side of it. Except there's the black top I just mentioned. Okay, now we're on to the 65 GTO. In its sophomore year, Pontiac cloaked the GTO in a new sheet metal. While the 115-inch wheelbase didn't change, the overall vehicle length increased 3 inches. Vertically stacked headlights and with a full width of grille grade, the GTO buff muscular look reflecting the division's wide track look. Under the huge hood lurked a 389 cubic inch V8, available in one of two flavors: a 335 horsepower version, available with equipped with a single 4-barrel carburetor, and an optional tri-power version was rated at 360 horses. Either engine delivered plenty of grunt. The base engine could vault the GTO to 60 miles per hour in just 7.2 seconds. 0 to 60 miles an hour in 7.2 seconds. Wow. While the quarter mile was dispatched in only 16.1 seconds at 89 miles an hour. When the GTO debuted in 1964, it rolled onto the showroom as a mid-year entry. This limited sales, but by the time the 65 GTO hit dealership lots, Pontiac was ready to sell its muscle car into significant volumes. In advertising blitz, including the release of the 45 RPM record that allowed S-rating GTO owners to hear their favorite car being put through its paces, with hitting its stride a convertible version of the even trapped four-pace muscle cars duties at the 1965 Motor Trend Riverside 500 race. Yet not every muscle car led a pampered life. Witnesses this example. Converted to a race car upon initial purchase, it spent a format of years hammering down various drag strips, while that lifestyle tended to keep the miles low. Each click of the odometer was hard fought. Finally, this GTO was pulled frontline duty and converted back into the street car. A conversion that included the installation of a new white interior. There's everything you need to know. Hold on a second. I'll be back. What? Hold on. Oh my God. All right. Okay, I cannot sit on that freaking floor anymore. So I'll just do it like this. Here's the front of the GTO. The 1965 GTO. She looks beautiful. Here we go. The Chevelle. The Chevelle was growing up in 1966. There was nothing artificial under the hood. Big block muscle and lots of it ensured that a driver with heavy foot instead of rear tires. A trio of 396 engines meant that a buyer could get as much horsepower as he or she wanted could afford. The standard SF396 power plant, or RPO L35, generated 325 horsepower, boosted 410 pounds of torque, foot-pounds of torque. The next rung of the ladder to performance excess was the RPO L34, which used components like a forged crankshaft, four-bolt bearing shafts, aggressive camshaft to help deliver 360 horses and 420 foot-pounds of twist. At the top of the 396 food chain, we cited RPO L78, an engine with an increased compression, so valve mysteries, and even other bumstick, and the on pursuit of 335 horsepower and 415 foot-pounds of torque. This engine could hurl a Chevelle to 60 miles an hour in just 6.5 seconds. That kind of performance, the Chevelle in the thick spotlight battles of any Saturday night. And let's not kid ourselves, the Chevelle SS was built to cover a straight line very quickly. Anything else was just great. That's what SS stands for some of those people out there who forget or either just don't know. It stands for Super Sport. Oh boy, an Oldsmobile with a convertible. This is the 1966 Oldsmobile 442 convertible. Not every muscle car devotee wanted a bare-bones vehicle that delivered a large dose of performance within a minuscule dollop of comfort. For the buyer who wanted it all, gut gym-wrenching acceleration, acceptable handling, and luxurious surroundings, the list of potential muscle cars was very short, and at the top of the page was Oldsmobile's 442. Oldsmobile offered the 442 package in 5 body types, including the Cutlass Sport Coupe, Cutlass Holiday Coupe, and Coupe Club Coupe. We know Cutlass Convertible. The 442 option started with the 1964 model and was actually the civilian version of the B09 police apprehender pursuit package. Before long, the public embraced the 442 as valuable alternative in the muscle car field. While some muscle cars packed more cubic inches and horsepower beneath their hoods than the brawny Oldsmobile, the 442 didn't have an extend to any apologies. With 400 cubic inches V8, the base 442 was rated at 350 horsepower. Midway through the model year, Oldsmobile released the RPO L69 option, putting a tri-power introduction system on the power plant. This setup checked within the 360 ponies enough for Car Life magazine to flog a 442 up to 60 miles an hour in only 6.3 seconds. The drag strip could be converted into 15.2 seconds at 96.6 miles an hour, respectable for a full-size vehicle with any bias-ply tires. Of all of the 442 models offered in 1966, the rarest was the Convertible, the one you're looking at now. The 442 Convertible exuded a level of sophistication unheard of most muscle cars compared to its competition. It was a gentleman's express among a package of hooligans. There's everything you need to know about it right there. As if you're just buying it. V8. Oh yeah, the Charger. Claiming that it was an oil-burning, cold-blooded temperature engine. In fact, well-maintained Hemi no more needed special treatment than any other high-performance engine. Under low RPM driving, the spark plugs would tend to foul. The deflecting of the accelerator would with a resulting spread down the quarter mile only 14.4 seconds at 100 miles per hour. Never a cheap option with it. $800.55 did little for vehicles cornering ability. But then we had the Ford Mustang for the upper range of the tachometer. Off the line, lesser engines in the mobile would grab the lead on that. But as speed increased, the top end sync engine was reportedly distinct through the Ford, rolling the Dodge Hemi down the road. The sound of a Hemi at full throttle would give anyone goosebumps, and that's one of the most appealing features of the car. Unfortunately, it didn't appeal to many buyers. Only 118 were equipped with the Hemi for 1967. Today, in this day, they are some of the most rarest muscle cars ever found. Here's what you need to know of the car. Beautiful. I mean, I like what we get today, but this is just freaking beautiful, dude. Like, beautiful. Its interior with its automatic transmission. I think this is even before they had the back seat. Or maybe that is the back seat. I don't know. Another GTO. As the decade of the 1967. Hold on. Alright, let's just say that again. Oh, look at that license plate. Grr. As the decade of the 1960s began to wind down, Pontiac continued to refine the popular GTO. Subtle exterior trim changes and minor updates with the interior were what most people noticed for the 1967 model year. Yet beneath the hood, changes were bolder. No longer was a tri-power introduction system available. Thanks to an click from GM's corporate management to compensate, the 389 cubic inch V8 grew courtesy of a bore out to 400 cubes. Pontiac found that the pricey tri-power option, while a marvel to look at, was an expensive route to horsepower. The wide track division found better living through cubic inches. It was cheaper and easier to deliver to massive amounts of power just by enlarging the engine. 4 flavors of a 400 cubic inch fun were on the menu, and while some were spraying for the economy version of the engine, the vast majority of buyers were with its 355 horsepower and actual twisting 441 foot-pounds of torque. A small number of the GTOs of this era were messaged by the top of the ridge of the Royal Pontiac and Royale, I meant to say, Oklahoma, Michigan, Royal Oak, Michigan. Oh yeah, now I'm getting myself confused again. This dealership marketed and sold a performance enhancing package for the GTOs that included thinner head gaskets, recurve distributors, colder spark plugs, larger jets in the carburetor, and a bunch more performance tweaks. The resulting Royale Bobcat was a street legal vehicle that was produced starting power. Exterior indications of Royals were held to a minimum, the better to real and suspecting drivers. One dealer option that turned heads was the forged aluminum Hurst wheels. Hurst had a well-earned reputation for unbreakable products. And as these wheels were no different, the only problem was the cost. $69.50 per wheel. Big money back in 1967, but no one argued that they didn't look great on the GTO, especially on the convertible. There's a GTO. Ram Air. Hood scoops. Oh, now 68 Chevelle. Yeah, that's where the turbojet symbol came from. It was a Chevelle 68 something. I don't know if it was this one or the no, it was this one. I'm pretty sure. But this one just takes off the flags, like from the Corvette. Chevrolet had made sure that any vehicle in its lineup was wearing the Super Sport badge, had the beans to back up its aggressive looks. Chevy introduced a new body on the popular Chevelle in 1968, and the silt shape took well to the SS treatment. With the Mark IV big block engine under the hood, the Chevelle was a dangerous foe at its spotlight. The three levels of the 396 performance were offered, with horsepower ranging from around 325 to 375 horsepower. But there was always someone who wants more, especially when it comes to performance. Chevrolet had developed a set of aluminum heads to bolt onto the RPO 370, no, L78 396, reducing way over the front wheels by about 200 pounds. Released for sale in December 1967 and using the RPO code of L89, these limited production heads were temperamental, producing popping and splitting until the aluminum warmed up and expanded, sealing the combustion chambers, but they were flowed well. And with a solid lifter, valve train, 11.01 compression, and a huge 800 CFM Holley carburetor, they helped generate a bit more than the factory rated 375. It's believed that this car may be the last remaining example of the 1968 Chevelle SS 396 with RPO L89. Of course, with being a super sport, this Chevelle enjoyed a full state of performance goodies, including dual exhaust, heavy suspension, and badging inside and out. When people knew a thing or two about performance, pulled up next to a Chevelle, cocked an ear toward the engine compartment, and heard the tappity tappity sound of solid lifters at work. They knew that they better be packing some serious horsepower before challenging the potent Chevrolet. Collecting rats like a hungry politician collects contribution, contributions at a fundraiser. An L89 equipped Chevy, a body would pick up and fly, charging to 16 miles per hour in just 6.5 seconds. If you keep the hammer down, a quarter mile would fly in about 14.5 seconds at 100 miles per hour. And we wonder why the insurance companies started getting all suspicious. Here's the Chevelle. Yes, now we get on to Fords. This is a Cobra Jet, Ford 28. Or I believe it is, I don't know. It's a 1968 Ford Shelby GT 500 KR convertible, as you can tell. When bench racers got together to swap lies, everyone agrees that the top honor for cool names goes to Carroll Shelby. From the Cobra to the GT 500 KR, Texan had a knack for labeling his cars for maximum effect. The mouth-filling GT 500 KR, short for King of the Road, had performance to match the name. Understand, Shelby wasn't building race cars that could be driven on the street anymore. In fact, Ford was building the cars labeled Shelby by '68. But with heavy input from Carroll, equipped with an R-Code 428 cubic inch Cobra Jet engine, the GT 500 KR was a very fast grand touring car rather than the tossable race car with lights that carried Shelby's name in the back. In 1965, Ford released a hot big block Cobra late in the model year, and Shelby, hearing that Chevrolet was planning to call a version of its big block Camaro the King of the Road, beat Chevy to the punch by calling his latest road car the GT 500 KR. By 1968, insurance companies were starting to sniff around factory muscle cars. Flaunting by big numbers in a sales sponsor was like a waving red flag. So Ford Shelby rated the beefy Cobra jet engine at just 335 horsepower. Sure, it was made 335 horses on its way to making yet more. The torque figure of the 440 foot-pounds was closer to real output of the huge V8. Hood scoops weren't there for the show. They fled cool ambient air directly into the air cleaner. Since this was a Shelby, the suspension was not ignored. Ford fitted a heavy-duty stock absorbers front and rear on vehicles equipped with manual transmissions. The rear shocks were scattered in an attempt to minimize axle hop under the heavy acceleration. With the Texas-sized torque of the Cobra jet engine, the GT 500 KR wasn't still as a good father for bench racers everywhere. Here's the Cobra. Sorry, my light is like legit getting in the way. Yep, and there's a Cobra for you. Or shall I say a Cobra convertible. As you can tell by the top, it is a convertible. Now we get into the excessive years. Ow. As the 1960s wound down, the wrench excess defined you guys, I'm gonna have to stop there because this video is already an hour long and my voice is kind of getting a bit tired, so I'm just gonna stop this now. But anyways, that's just all I could fit into the video.
yeah, you guys, I'll see you guys in the next video. Hopefully it won't be an hour long. Bye.